Here's some tips on how to figure out gear or figure out travel so that you can paddle and explore other places. So Laine reached out with a great question on wanting to branch out and explore kayaking destinations farther than a car ride away. So here's a couple of things to consider if you wanted to travel and kayak far away from home. The first thing that I'd recommend is finding out local resources. So that's either people, clubs, instructors, outfitters, paddlers that know the area you're interested in. Maybe they do guided tours, or maybe they teach in these areas, or maybe they're just part of a club or paddling community in that location, and not only could be a great resource for information, but also could be a great resource on how to make it all come together. So whether it's renting gear or advice on locations to go to or times during the year that some locations might be open to paddlers, you never know what you might find unless you reach out to local resources that can help you make those decisions. I'll give you an example. My friend Danielle and I wanted to plan a trip together, and when we decided on the Sumidero Canyon together, he had a couple of kayaks himself and some of the gear that maybe we could have used for the trip. But he had been talking to Rafael, the owner of Mayan Seas Kayaks, for a little bit, and then we brought to Rafael the idea of maybe going to this canyon. And Rafael was so enthusiastic of helping us outfit the trip that he actually wanted to come himself. And along with Danny as well, that was just a wealth of local knowledge to make this trip come together. If I had gone by myself to Mexico, one, I wouldn't have known exactly where to paddle. Two, I would have never known of this particular location. But three, if we hadn't hooked up with Rafael, all of the logistics in terms of gear, transportation, how we would all meet up, how we would make it all work, so it all organically came together and it became an amazing trip. Now let's shift to another way that you can explore a place that's far away. Is there's symposiums all around the world for paddling, and the thing is, usually they're open for anybody to join as long as you have the minimum requirements depending on the type of symposium and depending on the classes or adventures they will take. So this is an area that I really love because getting to go to different symposiums puts me in contact with other paddlers, and it also, I can take away not only a story from meeting these paddlers and seeing what they do in those specific locations, but also I could always continue to push my learning, continue to push my paddling. But usually for a symposium, let's say Lumpy Waters out on the West Coast, or the Hudson River Greenland Festival here in New York, for any of them, there are different ways that you can set up to show up, and then lots of different amount of gear might be accessible to you. A lot of times they'll rent kayaks, for example, if it's something where you need a certain kayak for several days. Or if you show up to Hergif, you can come with a kayak if you'd like, or Kayak USA has an entire fleet of skin-on-frame kayaks that are available at every event. So if people come without a kayak, or if they come with a kayak but want to test the skin-on-frame, they're able to. You can reserve it for a class, sometimes for a day. When my wife and I went out to Styx on the West Coast, we did a similar thing. I was able to try several kayaks, one each day, by reserving one each time. And that was a fantastic way of going to a symposium across the country without having to worry about having actual kayaks with us. Lastly, you could always just find a trip that you're really interested in, like our circumnavigation in Lofoten in Norway with Christopher and Matt, where this for them is a yearly trip, and they have everything sorted ahead of time so that they are in communications with an outfitter that will have all of the gear necessary if someone needs to rent gear from them, or if they're bringing their own gear, great, they can just come along and then they will just be on the guided tour. Just like that, there are trips and tours all over the world. If you just pick a destination and try to find, like I said, a local resource, you can then find out what kind of trips they have planned, what kind of accommodations they might give. Like for example, in Maine, there are some trips that are bed and breakfast based, where you actually have a guided tour that will go from bed and breakfast to bed and breakfast. So that's glamping in full style. So you could be on the water all day, but then sleep in a comfortable accommodation in the evening. Now, some outfitters in Maine will have that, and then on the flip side will also have a camping equivalent of the trip. So if you want to rough it, you can. If you want to glamp it, you can. So now let's talk a little bit about gear that I like to take. And a lot of this I have learned over the years in going to a lot of these different trips. My friends know that I usually always come over prepared, but over the years I've managed to get my gear down smaller and smaller because I realize just how much I usually take that I end up not using. Well, the main thing I would say is take with you everything that is important to you that fits right. So if you have to take a dry suit or neoprene or booties or anything that's going to be on your body and you want it to fit well, you need to try to make a way to bring it with you, because a lot of times if you rent, you don't know really what you're going to get. Don't get me wrong, in many situations you'll show up and they'll have great equipment for you to rent, but if you want something to really fit and you're finicky about the way your gear fits, all of that stuff, try to take with you. For example, anytime I go to a local event, I will usually bring extra gear with me just in case someone doesn't have it or just in case something breaks. I'll always have extra dry suits, extra dry tops, extra whatever. I'll just bring them with me just in case. But if I fly somewhere, I'll only bring whatever I know I'm going to use for sure. I like bringing my own skirt. I use a reed skirt that fits me really well and it's very flexible. So it fits, and because it's not very heavy, it fits on a lot of different cockpit sizes. So that's something that I love bringing with me because I know it makes a certain seal in pretty much anything I wear. So I usually take that with me. I used to use a Snapdragon skirt that was a lot heavier, and that one I wouldn't travel as much with because it's just so much bigger and bulkier. But the reed one is very thin, so I'm able to roll it up easily, put it away in my luggage, and take it with me. Usually PFDs you can usually get at events if you just tell them ahead of time, or if you're going on a trip, local paddlers will usually have extra PFDs. If I drive to an event or a symposium, I almost always bring extra PFDs just in case someone, as I said before, forgets something. I'm always happy to help out. So in the same respect, a lot of times you don't have to take that with you. But I like using my own PFD because I have it set up for my cameras and for the way that I like putting stuff away in it. So a lot of times I'll deal with the bulkiness of taking my PFD just because I know it'll fit me and I'll be able to fit all my gear in there. Well, if you're rock gardening or you're gonna take surf lessons, I usually like taking my old helmet because I like how it fits, but also I have a mount that I usually put on it so that I can have a camera on it. Long story, but I usually like those types of pieces I like bringing with me. I used to try to bring a paddle with me everywhere I went, and years ago it was a little easier traveling with a paddle. They used to let you bring them on the planes. Now they don't as much, so if you're taking a carbon paddle or something, a two-piece, it's a little bit harder nowadays. But lately what I've been doing is I have a four-piece that I've been using from Nimbus that I just throw into my bag, and usually it's been okay. And then lastly, from the trips I've done, when it comes to camping, I try to take the things that I really feel most comfortable with. So while you can't fly, for example, with gas for a stove, maybe you can use your stovetop if you really feel comfortable with it. Or I like my sleeping mat because it packs down very small, so that's an easy thing to take. And same goes with a sleeping bag. I love my sleeping bag. I like taking it with me. If I know that I'm going to be sleeping outdoors, my hammock is a really easy go-to that packs super small. Usually I like taking that with me. Tents, you can always just borrow one, rent one, whatever, it's easy. But out of all of the gear, the main takeaway I would say is, if you can, try not to check anything in. I know that sometimes that's a very hard thing to do because we want to take so much gear with us, but on the way there, on the way to your trip, especially if you don't have a lot of extra time between when you land and when the trip starts, I try to fit everything into my carry-on because we've had friends and other paddlers that their stuff has not reached the destination in time, and then they're left scrambling. When we went to Lofoten, we had a very tight window that we had to get from Oslo to Buda, and then from Buda we had to catch a ferry that was 4 hours to Lofoten. And having that with me the entire time just gave me a sense of security that I knew that my equipment was going to be there with me for the duration of the trip. On the way back, if you want to check it, that's not as big a deal because it can get to your house at any other time once you get home. But I like trying to fit everything as much as I can in my carry-on luggage and then prioritize based on that. So the last thing I would say is if it isn't a symposium or it isn't a guided tour, if you're just going to explore an area, like I said, the local resources is really the way to go. Also in terms of when to go and for backup plans in case the weather doesn't cooperate, because for a symposium, it's probably going to happen no matter what, and they already have taken into account when is the best time for that symposium to take place. Now, if you're just going to an area that you don't know anything about, it's always great to not only know what weather will be like when you're there, but also probable and possible backup plans in case that happens. And the last thought I'll leave you with Henrietta was a fellow paddler that was on our circumnavigation, and I thought she had the best outlook when we came back from the trip, because she had taken a 2-week vacation. And so for the first week, she was doing the circumnavigation with us. And for the second week, she was going wherever the sun was going to be shining. She had left it open. She had the kayak on her car. She had her camping gear. Wherever it was going to be beautiful, that's where she was going to be. And she had an entire week to enjoy that. So I just wanted to end with that thought, just because it was so inspiring to me to hear that. So if you have any comments, questions, or if you have any stories you'd like to share, please leave a comment below. Subscribe if you like. I'm always trying to put these videos out. As always, with Kayak Hipster. Thank you for watching. See you next time.